What's up guys, my name is Jeff Frey, featured guest host here with Weld.com, and on today's episode we're going to be building a Ferrari engine coffee table. But before that, we're going to head up to the Weld.com lab where I started this project off, cutting the tabletop for it. I'm back up in the lab with Kent New. He's the head engineer with Astaris. I'm working on a Ferrari engine table, and he's gonna help me cut a piece of sheet metal that's gonna be on the top of this thing that the glass is gonna lay on top of. So let's get at it. So before I get into the design on this plate here, you're probably asking, why a Ferrari engine? I had came across this engine that had a dropped piston in it, so they were gonna get rid of this thing. And I'm not gonna let a Ferrari engine go to the trash. So I was like, why not make a coffee table out of this thing? We could do some really cool stuff with it. I went ahead and I wanna be able to see the engine because it's a Ferrari engine. The engine is 18 inches by 20 inches. And I'm gonna do a 32 by 26 inch hole in the middle of the plate here so you can see this thing. And then I got 13 inches on each end here, and then 4 inches on the side. It's gonna connect the whole piece of plate here. Then we'll go ahead and put the Ferrari logos in there. We'll do this whole thing, a wrinkle red Ferrari finish on it, maybe illuminate it with some LED lights. Kent's got it drawn up here for us already. We're gonna go ahead and get this thing all fired up and get this thing cut. Make sure we get a good cut on the first try. Let's hope, man. Let's get it. We got this thing cut. I'm really pleased with the design and how it turned out. Thanks to Kent helping me get this cut on the Koike machine. The Thermocut consumables did an awesome job giving me some clean cuts on this thing. Hardly any slag on it at all. I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing loaded up, get it down to my shop in Cortez, and that's where we're gonna build the tubular side of it, the stand for the engine, and also that's gonna support this. So let's get at it. We're down here in Cortez, Florida in my shop, Superformance Fab. We've got our tabletop for the Ferrari engine coffee table cut. We also have our Ferrari F360 engine here, as well as the material we're gonna be utilizing today. We're gonna take this 1-inch carbon steel tubing and make a base for this thing, and it'll support on the engine mounts here. Then we're gonna take the 1-inch carbon steel flat bar and we're gonna go around the perimeter of the tabletop there. That piece of sheet metal is pretty flimsy, so we need to beef it up a little and it'll also look better. We're gonna go through, get a design made for how we wanna do the base for this, and then we're gonna lay it out, cut this stuff, get it prepped, welded, as well as the tabletop. So let's get at it. As you can see, there's a big hole cut in the middle of the tabletop here. I'd spoke on this before, that the engine is gonna be visible through the opening here. So this hole being bigger than the engine, I'm gonna use this rectangle here as the base for the base of the engine. So we have a inside measurement of 26 inches there by 32 inches. So on the layout of the 1-inch pipe, we'll miter 45-degree cuts on the corners, and we'll utilize that inside measurement, 26 by 32, for our measurement to start with. We're gonna have to get a center line laid out on these things, so when we make our miter cuts, they're all perpendicular to each other and everything is square. So we'll start with that. Let's get at it. First, we're gonna start out by laying a center line out on some of these pieces of tubing. We want this piece to be laid out right, so when we make these miter cuts, they're not rolled out from each other and this thing becomes square. So I'm gonna take this piece of 1/4-inch flat bar and my Sharpie. I have them blocked up against something. You can't have this thing roll at all. And I'm gonna take it and just make a center line on the pipe. I have a couple of marks made at my 26 and 32 inch points, so I know where to make these. I make them a little bigger than I will actually be using, so I have that center line on there. Now we got that made, we're gonna go ahead and make a 45-degree miter cut, and then we'll make a template from that with the center line located on it, and we can lay all these pieces out, get them cut, prepped, and ready to weld. So let's get at it. So first, we're gonna make our template for the 45-degree miter cuts. I got a drop piece here. I'm gonna go ahead, get it cleaned up, lay out the cut, make the cut. We're gonna check the cut, and then make the template from there, lay out all the other pieces, and get those cut and prepped, ready to weld. We're gonna take our paint stripper here on the drill and just clean this stuff up. It's a lot easier to see the marker that you're laying out with, not through this black mill scale on here. So. We've got that laid out. Now I'm gonna take my square here, and I'm just gonna draw a guideline, and I'm gonna start with that, transfer it from one side to the other, and make an initial cut. We've got this laid out. This is just a baseline for us. I'm gonna take the bandsaw, get this cut made, and we're gonna check it and see how close it is, get it pretty well perfect. Got the cut made, went really well. Looks like a pretty perfect cut. I'm gonna take the degree finder here, check our piece. It's 0.02 degrees out of level. And then against the face of that, 41, 42 degrees. It looks like this side needs to be laid back a little bit more to get this thing at a 45. So we'll just clean it up a little bit, check it again, and make our template from there. 44.5 degrees, that'll be good base to start with. This thing will draw in some, so I'm all right with that. So we're gonna take a piece of manila folder, whatever you got laying around, cardboard, whatnot. We're gonna use that as our template. First, gotta get the burrs off of here. Then we're gonna take this thing, do a wrap around on it, apply a little bit of tape. We're gonna use another piece just to lock it down so don't move it while we trim it back. And we'll take our file, back drag it to cut the template there. Now that that's done, we can pull this piece off. We will fold it like so, and this will give us our center line. So now we can take this template, lay it out on all the rest of our pieces on those center lines, and we'll have square fits on all four corners. We'll get this thing squared away, so let's get the rest of them laid out. Originally, we said we were gonna go inside to inside on these pieces, 26 by 32. I went ahead and made each one of them an inch longer, so we're gonna have 27 and 33 inches from inside to inside. Now, you see I have a straight piece cut here already. That is our inside to inside measurement. I'm gonna need to add 1 inch for the overall length times 2 for both sides. So my overall length for this piece is gonna be 35 inches, and then on this piece here will be 29 inches. And that'll be from outside to outside. So now, when I go to lay this template out, all I gotta do is butt it up straight to the end, and all the inside measurements should line up exactly how we planned. You see we got our center line laid out, the pieces laid out on there, both of them. They look like they're on the same path, which is what we want. After we make the cuts, we can put a level on there as well to check them. We're gonna go ahead, get this one cut, get the rest of them laid out and cut as well. All right, we've got both cuts made. We can go ahead and check these to make sure that our center line is straight, exactly how we want it. So I'm gonna put the degree finder on here. It's at 90 degrees. So this one should be 90 degrees as well. And it is 91. So within 1 degrees of each other being square to each other. That's awesome. I should be able to just face these with the grinder a little bit, clean them up. It'll be good enough to weld for sure. You might be wondering, why is it that I use this layout technique as opposed to using a horizontal bandsaw and making cuts like that? You can see I don't have one of those saws for one, as well as the setup for that saw. I feel it can be a lot more trickier and complicated to set that saw up to make these cuts as consistent to each other as I'm trying to make them. And this layout I feel really helps with keeping that exactly how I want it. The time in this, I think, is probably a little bit faster. Yeah, we don't have other tools, but we're gonna utilize the tools we have to do the job. And I think if it works for you, that's great. Do so. We're gonna go ahead, get the rest of these laid out and cut and get this thing welded together. We got all our pieces cut, prepped, and ready to weld. Now we're gonna check the fit before we go ahead and get this thing tacked together. So I'm gonna make 2 L pieces before we make the rectangle itself. The square shows that this is pulled in just a hair. So when I go to tack this, I'm actually just gonna put a single tack on the outside corner. That'll allow this thing to open up and we can get the whole thing fit together. We'll measure from corner to corner, make sure it's square, tack it the rest of the way off. We'll get this thing welded out. But first, we're gonna go over here, turn the bottle on. We're gonna use 100% straight argon, and we're gonna utilize the Everlast Power TIG 210 EXT. We're gonna weld this stuff on DC negative. We're gonna utilize the High Freak start with a foot pedal. We'll turn it up to about 79 amps. That should be adequate enough for what we're doing here. So we're gonna be utilizing the Jazzy 10 cup, along with some 332 E3 tungsten as well. Some 70S 1/16 wire. Got this thing tacked. Now we're gonna measure corner to corner. About 45 and 9/16 there. 45 and 3/8. So this being shorter, this being longer, this has to get hit in a little bit in order for that to grow. We're only going a little bit, so it's not gonna take much. 45 7/16, 45 and 3/8. I'm gonna go ahead and start by tacking the inside of the longer one because it'll draw in and it'll grow out a little bit there. So I'm gonna put a tack here and there on the inside and we'll lock down the other 2. Check it. Check it one more time, just to be sure. Yeah, that's it. We'll get this piece welded out, then we'll move on to the top piece that's gonna house the glass. All right, that wraps it up for the welding of the base. We got the top piece here. As you can see, a little bit rusted, so we need to go ahead, clean off this rust, as well as very minimal slag from the plasma cutting done here. So we'll get this edge cleaned up with the grinder and get this top edge cleaned up with the paint stripper or rust remover. Works great on rust as well as the mill scale on the pipe. And as you've seen before in other videos, I've used it for the finish on my stainless steel tubing as well. Let's get this thing cleaned up. Got that all ground, cleaned up. I'd just like to give a shout out to Como Caps. If you guys have never owned one of these, head over to Como Caps where you can use the code Weld10 to get 10% off your purchase. I've used them for years. I love them. When I'm grinding especially, they come in handy. They fit awesome. They're very comfortable. I've used them for years. Head over there, get you a Como cap. It's a promo code Weld10. Got this thing prepped now. We're gonna go ahead and take some measurements, get the flat bar cut, get it prepped, and get this thing welded out. On the 1-inch flat bar, we're actually gonna weld it underneath, and the weld will be on this outside face so we can grind it and we don't have grind marks on the top of this. It'll just aesthetically look better once the finish is put on here. You don't have any grind marks or gouging on that face. But the overall length is going to be 52 inches there. Then we got 34 inches there. But I also have to consider the takeout for the 1/8 inch of the material on this side, as well as the 1/8 inch of the material on that side. So my 34-inch piece is actually gonna get cut at 33 3/4. And that'll allow it to lay inside of the other piece on the outside. And we have a nice flush look all the way around the sides and the edges there. We'll get those laid out, get those pieces cut and prepped, and yeah, get them welded on here. We got all the 1-inch flat bar cut, prepped, ready to weld. I went ahead and put a bevel on the top edge that's gonna go against the tabletop here. That way it gives us a spot to actually lay the filler metal in. I want a flush, clean look on this, so I'm not gonna butt it straight up together and then lay weld on top of the base material. I actually want a groove to lay that material down in. That way I can grind the weld out, and it'll aesthetically look good, and we're not taking anything away from the structural integrity of the weld. We did that for the edge, as well as where the end piece will meet up with the side piece. I put a bevel on that edge as well. We're gonna start off tacking the 2 longer pieces on because they go from end to end, and then we'll set the end pieces on the outside edges here. We got the first piece ready to tack here. I found this piece of channel I had laying around. It really helps with getting this piece flat for me to be able to hold this piece of flat bar up to it, but it's straight too. So I clamped the piece down to the base, then I took the littler clamps and clamped the flat bar to the side of it. Take the little hammer here, knock it in where I need to flush it out real nice. We got this first one fit up. We're gonna go ahead, get it tacked off, and get the rest of them tacked off and get to welding. We got this thing tacked up all the way around. As you can see, a lot more stable than it was before, especially once this thing gets welded out. Got a lot of weld left to do, a little bit of grinding, so let's get at it. The reason why I'm welding it the way I am is because I want a nice sharp edge on that top edge. So I'm gonna use gravity to my advantage and not weld this thing the other way, because that top edge, if I do get it molten, it's gonna wanna fall down. So I'd rather weld it like this and allow my material to fall down and actually build that edge up a little more, if anything, so I can keep that nice sharp edge. As well as, we're only gonna weld a couple inches at a time, so I'll weld a few inches here, move down, weld a few more inches, same thing all the way around. Turned out exactly how I anticipated it to. Nice sharp edge, got the weld ground out of there, nice and smooth, looks awesome. I can't wait to see this thing complete. That's gonna wrap it up for today's episode on the Ferrari engine coffee table. Until next time, I got a lot of work to do on this thing still, but thanks for watching, and we'll see you later.